So we all believe in diversity. We all believe in inclusion. We all believe in everyone's voice being heard. But are there limits to free speech? Hello.
Hello, Rabbi David.
Hey, Rabbi Litwak. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Good.
fired up. I'm excited about this topic.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of, no, let me change that. I have been struggling a lot. Every other week I get like a free therapy session with Rabbi Litwak about my
Right here
problems.
for you.
I've been struggling a lot because, and I'll just lay this out. On the one hand, I believe wholeheartedly in free speech that everyone should be able to say, except if they're causing harm to another person. On the other hand, I feel like people who are spreading hate, who are spreading bigotry, don't have a right. I feel like they give up that right. And I'm not sure how to put those two together. And so today we wanted to talk about how can Judaism help us figure that out, right? What does Judaism have to say about free speech and the limits thereof? Maybe we should start just with, because I think a lot of people don't understand what free speech means in America. That the First Amendment doesn't say, I think, anybody can say anything. It says the government cannot get in the way of you saying what you want to say, again, with limitations. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I wonder though if the government is the one who's going to police this,
Right.
uh, then aren't you saying the same thing? Uh, that you know,
So,
in America, we we cherish our free speech.
right.
Don't tread on me.
Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof. We're not talking about freedom of religion today. Abridging the freedom of speech. So this is the government cannot make a law, cannot abridge the freedom of speech or the press or the right to people peaceably to assemble, to petition the government for redress of grievances. I think very often we take this idea and we try and tack it onto Twitter or they're not government. They're private companies. They can censor anybody they want legally.
Well, that isn't look, just because you're a private company doesn't mean that you can do whatever you
Sure, it
want.
does.
I
They
mean,
can. They could censor anybody they want. It's
they
their platform.
could. They could. The question is whether government can force them uh, into uh, censoring somebody.
Oh, agreed, 100%. I'm just saying that I think that we sometimes misunderstand this amendment and are right. That this amendment doesn't say that Twitter has a responsibility to pull someone down or to take down a post. They don't, unless the government gets involved.
Okay, great.
Is that fair?
I think that that's probably fair. I'm
Okay.
not a First Amendment
Neither am
scholar.
I. Neither am I.
Um,
So the question, though, is let's imagine for the moment that our country was ruled by halakha, by Jewish values and Jewish norms.
yeah.
What would Judaism say about um,
Well, let's
people?
start with what Judaism would say about free speech.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
So, Jewish tradition cherishes free speech. Right? We've got lots and lots of individuals and places in our tradition that uphold that. There's a wonderful quote by Moses Ibn Ezra that says, "When a person refrains from speech, the ideas die, the soul
Mm,
stops, and the senses deteriorate."
mm,
Which is such a just a lovely
yeah.
thought, really reminding us that um, we have a responsibility to speak up and to share differences. And we have a long history of the assertion of opinions, sometimes quite unpopular opinions by um, individuals throughout history. Certainly in the Bible, you've got the prophet Nathan, who really denounces King David because, well, King David stole Bathsheba from her husband. You've got Elijah, who's excoriating King Ahab. You've got the prophets, lots of other prophets who are chastising their neighbors and ruling powers alike. You've got individuals like Job who assert. So the idea that one has the right and the responsibility to stand up and speak is well grounded in Jewish tradition, and I would even say,
what you just made me think of, though, Rabbi, is I hadn't thought about the prophets in the context of this discussion. There were not just the prophets, but Rambam. People tried to silence him. People tried to silence the prophets.
correct.
We believe in free speech, and we also have a long history of folks trying to silence people with whom they disagree.
Yeah, well, or I don't like what you're saying. That doesn't jive with my life. Therefore, I'm going to try and
Right.
quash that. I think that Judaism stands on very, very firm ground that says that we don't allow for that. Look at Mishnah and Talmud, the two
Right.
pieces of rabbinic tradition out of rabbinic history. 2,000 years ago, we are encouraging diverse opinions, so much so that we preserve the minority opinions because the tradition says that you never know when the minority opinion will become the majority opinion.
Right.
Right?
Right.
When we will learn something new and thinking about free speech in our own country and around the world, where dissenters who were arguing against uh, great lapses in human rights spoke up, were tried to be silent. Others tried to silence them, and therefore it took years, decades to finally come around to the fact that they were right as the
And
prophet.
right. And the fact that those stories, especially the ones from the Bible, are
Mhm.
codified in the text. The rabbis in the times of the Mishnah and the Gemara, even in the Tanakh, well, sorry, not even in the Tanakh. I mean, they made choices about what should be included and what shouldn't be included. The book of Maccabees, right?
Right.
They decided it shouldn't be included. So they could have left these stories out, these dissenting voices, if you will. And by choosing to include them, I think that in part what they're saying is, yes, there were those who tried to silence them, but we're not going to allow that to happen.
Right.
Their dissension or their speech is going to be a part of our canon.
Right. There's a wonderful story of three rabbis who are in the rabbinic time. So this is when Rome was uh, the ruling power, and the story says that one rabbi chose to praise Rome. One rabbi chose to be silent, and Shimon Bar Yochai criticized Rome. And that criticism reaches the Roman governor, who then sentences Shimon Bar Yochai to death. He's forced to flee to live in a cave for 13 years. And he's the one who is celebrated in Jewish history for his courage, his willingness to stand up and stand out and speak
Mm.
out.
Wow.
So I think we stand on good ground when it comes to Judaism and free speech. I don't think there's anywhere where we're going to say that Judaism disagrees with the idea of free speech. But our question for today was, are there limits?
Right.
Right? And here's where I think that we want to understand the difference between American society and the philosophical difference between the Constitution and Jewish society, a la what we find in Torah. And I would say, according to the Constitution, humanity, man was created with certain unalienable rights. So the government has a job to do to protect those rights, to create laws that ensure that people are given those rights. According to the Torah, though, God didn't just create us and leave us. Okay? But rather, God is actively involved in the world, cares about what we do. And therefore, God didn't give us passive rights, but rather active responsibilities and duties. Okay? And
That's a
so,
sorry, that's a really beautiful parallelism there.
mhm,
So we don't we unlike the Constitution, we were not given passive rights. We're given active responsibilities.
responsibilities.
That's really beautiful.
And that's where I think we can find uh, some. Uh, some place in Judaism, we can find lots of places in Judaism, as I'm about to argue, where there is an actual limitation on free speech. Okay? Because it's not simply, I can say whatever I want, because I can point to a document that says you have you have freedom of speech. Okay? But rather we have responsibilities as human beings and as a society, right, to deal with that free speech. And so we have to be careful. Okay? Judaism teaches us that our speech is a responsibility, not just to speak out against evil or to speak out against wrongdoing, right? But how we use our speech, right, becomes our responsibility.
And
So
that's the laws of lashon hara, right? The
correct.
laws
All
of
right.
yeah, yeah.
What we would call ona'at devarim, hurtful speech, words that hurt, and we have that in the Torah. One shouldn't aggrieve his neighbor or his fellow, and you should fear God, for I, the Lord, am your God. Okay, that ona'at devarim includes purposefully saying something that will hurt or frighten or embarrass somebody. That's prohibited. So I can't hide behind free speech, right, when I'm talking trash about you and saying, "Oh, well, I get to do that because I have freedom of speech."
So
Judaism does that.
the limitation in America, at least my understanding of the limitation in America is don't yell fire in a crowded theater. It's
Right.
if it's going to cause if it could cause or lead to physical harm. But what Judaism suggests is that the definition of harm is broader than just when we physically bleed. There's a beautiful, and I don't remember where it's from. I'm sorry, teaching about embarrassment. That when someone is embarrassed, when the blood rushes out of their face,
Mm-hmm.
it's likened to literally being stabbed and the blood rushing out of your body. That's how serious embarrassment is. So emotional pain is, or emotional harm, I should say, is in that same category.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. If one, you know, at the same time, if one is saying hurtful things to you, right, or to someone else, you're not required to remain silent in fear of replying in a hurtful way and therefore transgressing this prohibition.
Well, wait, that's interesting. Wait a
Yeah,
second.
turning the other cheek is not a Jewish value.
I That's another story. Sorry, you just reminded me of something. Wait, that's fascinating. So, does that mean that the limitations, the Jewish limitations on free speech, are suspended to a certain extent when you are combating hateful, hurtful speech?
I believe that is the case. Right?
Wow. I didn't see that coming.
Practically speaking, if Jewish law, and this is where we could have a whole argument, if Jewish law were to deem certain speech to be negative or hurtful, it's prohibited in almost every circumstance.
Right.
Right? But, all right, if one is saying something hurtful to you or to someone else, all right, you can't. You're not required to remain silent in fear of replying. If I say something about this person, okay, and let's just put it out on the table. Okay, we've had a whole number of situations recently. Okay, Kanye West, all right, speaking terrible things. Okay, just because when I responded to that, I said negative things about Kanye West, okay, and that would be considered either Lashon Hara or Ona Devarim. I'm allowed to do that, okay, if what he is saying is causing somebody pain.
It makes me think about self-defense, how Judaism allows for self-defense, physical self-defense, when your
Right.
life is at risk. And the same thing is true here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Um, I wanted to, if it's okay, I want to share an example of, I found this text really interesting. So this is Moshe. So they're in the wilderness. He has gathered 70 elders and two guys, Eldad and Medad. It says the Spirit rested upon them. They were among those recorded, but they didn't go out to the tent, and they prophesied in the camp. So this next piece is what's interesting. A kid sees this and runs to Moses, and says, dude, you got to stop them. You got to shut them up. You got to put them in jail. You have to, because they're prophesying against you, I guess, as it were. And Moses' response is, no. Right? Would that the Eternal's people were prophets, that the Eternal put divine spirit upon them. It's almost as if he says to them, this isn't a bad thing. This is a good thing. Yes, they're maybe overstepping, maybe they're saying something negative, maybe, but
I would much rather them speak out.
Right.
And
There's
not.
a humility. So here's my follow-up question. Do I have to be humble enough to allow for people to offer opinions that feel to me just yucky? And I'm not really talking about anti-Semitism. That to me is sort of a clear line. I'm thinking more about, I don't know, pick a political issue. I mean, everything feels hot and fiery these days. But
Right.
do I have to listen to that?
No, I think you have to allow for that.
Okay.
Right? You don't have to listen.
Well,
Right?
no, of course.
All right. But I think that it's what made rabbinic Judaism work, and truthfully what Jewish life, it's made Jewish life work. Right? When we've had a tension between competing people, we've sharpened ourselves. It's when we become monolithic that I think we are problematic, and that goes for American society. Right?
Yeah.
We It's an imperfect system, right? But it's a pretty good system when you've got two competing political parties or camps, okay? Because if you allow for the other, right, and not shut them down. Right? Our problem in American society is that we're canceling each other. Right? We don't allow for. I don't even recognize you, Rabbi David, in your opinion. I don't see you. I don't hear you. I don't nothing. Okay? That's problematic.
Well, it's
Right?
problematic, except when the person that you don't recognize is spouting BS. I mean, when what they're offering, when what they're putting out there is hate and
Right.
ugliness, and I mean, I don't.
Yes, and I think that look, I think that at that point it's important that, as we talked about, to not shut down, to speak about that, right? Which is why I think that for a lot of years, I've spoken about this over the last couple of months when we've been dealing with our anti-Semitism. My feeling was I don't want to bring attention to anti-Semites, and the anti-Semite who is standing on the corner, I'm going to pretty much ignore. But when somebody has a voice and that voice is being heard, okay, then and that voice is being used to cause pain or fear or embarrassment, then I have a right and a responsibility to call that out. Right?
Can I extend that just a little bit, and by way of a question? So, calling it out. There's a beautiful teaching from the Chofetz Chaim that I came across that he is tradition, as I understand it, he is traditionally sort of hardline about any speech not directly made to someone's face is lashon hara. Even if you're praising someone, this is one of the weird things about lashon hara, is that lashon hara isn't just I don't like that person or that person is bad or lying about that person. Even good things said about a person not in their presence can be considered lashon hara, at least by the Chofetz Chaim. But then he has this one teaching where he says, one may even speak lashon hara and gossip if the townsfolk are going to appoint someone to some position and they're making a grave mistake. So, my question is, we just finished a midterm election cycle, and there were a lot of people talking badly about their opponents or about the candidates that they didn't support. I guess, number one, if you feel like people are making a grave mistake, is it okay to do that? And number two, and this is probably the harder question, is doesn't everybody feel like the other poses a grave, is perhaps a grave mistake? I mean, couldn't we all make the argument, well, I can say this because it's a grave mistake for X, Y, or Z to be in office?
Well, you're focused on the word grave, right? And maybe I think it's a challenge. I don't know how to define that. If I yell fire,
Right.
okay, not very loud in a theater, okay, or I yell fire in a theater that is me and my family and nobody else in it, is that illegal? Right? I think it's hard to determine, right, the line
Mm-hmm.
of what is going to be harmful, and for that matter, what is a grave mistake.
Right.
Right?
And so I guess that's why in American law, at least, it is defined. It's defined as physical harm. Judaism makes it much more difficult, because by bringing in embarrassment or emotional harm or spiritual harm, it allows for a lot more, I guess, wiggle room and being subject to interpretation.
Yeah, and I think it really forces us to think personally about governing our own voices, and being better, high, finding our better selves when it comes to speech. If we acknowledge that speech can hold great power, then of course with great power comes great responsibility. So I need to self-regulate, but that's a pretty high bar to reach.
It is, but I
So
love
much easier to trash talk.
right. But I love the phrase you just used, govern our own speech, that it's Jewish law. From a Jewish perspective, it isn't up to the government to govern as much as it is up to us to govern our own speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really beautiful way of thinking about it.
Well,
Hey, Rabbi, do you have dinner plans Saturday night?
I have a lot of dinner plans. In fact, I'm going to be having dinner with all over town in 6 different places. So yes, it's going to be fun.
We have our huge Dine for Sinai this Saturday. It's going to be amazing.
For it.
Really,
Yep.
really excited about
Yeah.
it. So,
About 80
and
people all over the place.
tomorrow night, I get to join you on the Bimon. I'm so excited.
Looking forward to
So
Shabbat with
excited.
Rabbi David.
Yeah, that'll be nice. It'll be nice to be back up there. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
a great discussion. And we will see you all in a couple. Oh, wait. Are we going to be able to do a couple? Oh, yeah. It's only like the 22nd, right?
Yeah.
Or the 23rd.
I'll be there.
Yeah, we should be okay.
I'm around.
All right, everyone. Thank
Very
you for
good.
watching. See you later.
Hey.